encouraging, inspiring, and empowering mothers on their parenting journey. Welcome to the OHbaby podcast. Being a mum can be overwhelming and unrelenting, we know. Each episode, we'll be bringing you the top tips, advice, and words of wisdom from experts and industry leaders to help you navigate your own path. It's the information you can trust. Mama, you got this.
So welcome to the OHbaby Empowered Parents podcast. I'm Angela Pedersen, founder of OHbaby. Christina, our editor, and I thought we'd mix it up a bit, and I get to host today. This is our first time. We'll also be available on YouTube. So if you want to watch us talk or listen from your TV while you're around the house, then you get to do that on YouTube now. So today I get the privilege of speaking with our guest today, Chantal Hoftsee. Chantal is a clinical psychologist working with children and adults, author of several books, including a children's book, The Big Balloon, which helps children and, truth be told, adults process their big emotions. Chantal hosts mindful parenting classes, including our very own collab, our online parenting course, which is available online at ohbaby.co.nz/mindful parenting. Welcome, Chantal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you again. I actually think back to when we were recording the mindful parenting class, and sometimes on occasion I go back to watch some of the videos, and you're just so calm. And, your voice is so calming, and it's just like I've got to channel my inner Chantal when I'm talking to my children.
Yeah, I do hear that sometimes, but it's not always the reality. But yeah, people do find that I come across very zen.
Yeah, you do.
Even though I'm not always feeling that way.
Fake it till you make it. Something like that. Hey, so tell us about yourself. Tell us about, the course and getting to that point and your family.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, my name is Chantal Hoftsee. I'm a clinical psychologist and a mother of three, originally from the Netherlands, but have been living in New Zealand for about 10, 11 years now. My kids are currently 9, 6, and 2.5. And several years ago, I started a private practice, and together with one colleague, Shirley Pasteroff, who's a counselor, and I was running mindfulness courses at the time. And Shirley and I, as we were just having our catch-ups over lunch and, chit-chat in between sessions, we were often talking about how those strategies were actually really helpful in our parenting. She has 5 kids. At the time, I only had 1. And then, the idea was born to adapt the material into a mindful parenting course. Since we did that, I had 2 more kids, so lots of opportunities to practice. And I think that was now probably 6, 7 years ago, and have been teaching that material all that time, and adjusted it and adapted it as we go and as we learned more things. And that's how I got into mindful parenting, really as a parent, but also as somebody that helps other parents incorporate that in their parenting. And it's one of the elements of my work that I really, really love. And I use it also in individual sessions a lot. So when I'm working with children who have some sort of need psychologically, my preference is very often to work with the child and the parents, because I think really that's where you get the best results. If we can change the dynamics at home in a positive way for everyone, that usually lasts much longer and is really, really helpful. So, what else would you like to know?
You just touched on the fact that, it's working with the family, really, isn't it? Because often what we're feeling inside as parents, we see in our kids. So tell me about mindfulness.
Yeah, mindfulness is very interesting and helpful in my view. It's nothing new. It's been around as long as human beings have been around. It has had lots of different names, different cultures practice it in different ways. There's also a lot of definitions for it, but the one that I really like is mindfulness is a combination of attention, and paying attention in a non-judgmental way. So I think, especially in the West, we are, highly distractible. There's so much stuff going on that we actually are it's hard for a lot of people to really pay attention to something. But that is a main element of mindfulness. And the other one, which I also find is hard work for a lot of people, including myself, is to observe those things without jumping to an opinion, jumping to a judgment, jumping to a label, but to just observe it without thinking about it, if that makes sense. So it can apply to a lot of different things. You can practice it intentionally, like I'm doing 3 minutes of mindfulness practice. But I think more and more, the way I see it, it is actually just an approach to life in general, and an approach to training your thoughts to be more mindful in just everyday life. And that will really, really help in lots of different ways. And one of those ways is that it really reduces the activation of our stress response, because often our response, that stress response, so the adrenaline and the cortisol, are often activated because we're actually not paying attention, but our mind has drifted off to something negative or positive, which triggers stress, or we are very judgmental in our thinking, which triggers a lot of stress. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is how I see mindfulness.
That's good. So what's an example of like a moment where you've like caught yourself like, okay, let's get into that mode?
Oh, it happens all the time. Even this morning might be a good example. Just like the rest of the country, we've had lots of rain and it's very muddy, and I'm completely over the rain. But in the mornings I go and feed the animals with my daughter. And that's a really important time for us because she's the middle one. I've got a 9-year-old who's very strong verbally, so takes up quite a bit of space. And then I've got a very clingy 2.5-year-old. So that is really our time. And then this morning, we had a bad night. Little one kept waking up. And then I woke up and it was raining, and I was just like, oh, I don't feel like going outside. And just that kind of that sinking feeling of, oh, I really don't feel like this. And I just noticed that and went, no, actually, it's just rain. It is what it is. It's not about, not getting wet. This is about having that special time with my daughter. So that was a moment of awareness, of noticing my inner judgment, and then adjusting it to, no, I do want to do this. This is something that I care about, and kind of removing that judgment from it to just create that energy shift and mood shift. Sometimes that's easier and sometimes that's really, really hard. This is a while ago, but when I got my wisdom teeth out, I was doing a lot of intense mindfulness practice. Like, I don't want to be here. No, I do want to be here. It's okay. Oh, I want to run away. No, you don't want to run away. That would not be helpful. You do want to be here. Everything's okay. So yeah, whenever something is unpleasant, that I guess is a really good opportunity to go back to mindful thinking to keep that stress at bay.
Yeah, I'm so relating to this right now because we're on deadline for the magazine, hence Christina not being here. And, there's always this intensity to putting a magazine out just at the end. And if you think about what I've learned myself is if I think about everything I need to do all at once, then the overwhelm comes, And I just think even like as a young parent with little kids, it's all the things you need to do overwhelm. Whereas if I think about okay, what do I have to do right now in this moment? The kids are here. I've got to feed my toddler. I'll go and do that, you know. The
Mm.
next thing will be, is that kind of like a mindful situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Focusing all of your attention, or at least most of it, on the here and now.
Yeah.
And then focusing on the here and now in a kind, non-judgmental way. And it's by no means something that it doesn't mean that you can't have an opinion or you can't have any feelings about things. But it sort of puts a filter on that, where the little things don't trigger you so easily anymore. Sure, the big things still will, because if something is actually wrong or actually in crisis, then of course you're going to be noticing that and having thoughts and feelings about that. But I find it a really helpful way to keep the triggers over the little things under control. The rain this morning is not a big deal. Like, it's just a bit of rain. It's not a big deal. But if I'm not mindful in that moment, I know that for me, that could have made me a bit grumpy. And when I'm a bit grumpy and I'm going out with my 6-year-old who is very hyper, that would probably annoy me, and I would probably be a little short with her, and then she would respond to that. And, it's those little things that can snowball and turn what could be a perfectly okay or even beautiful moment into something stressful. So it's really about eliminating that unnecessary stress.
Yeah, because they don't even know what's going on for you internally, and then whatever you're producing out of, that what's going on internally is what they're going to see and act out of, and feel, oh, is mummy, they can misread it to be, is mummy upset with me, when you're just really annoyed that it's raining.
Yeah, and I think we are all susceptible to that. Like, when somebody around us is on edge or anxious, or one of our first intuitive responses is, what have I done wrong? And often we haven't done anything wrong. It might be something completely external, but yeah, it can definitely play a role. So I find that it doesn't only help with your own well-being and mental health to have less stress, but it also can really help change relationship dynamics and create more helpful and healthy interactions. And I think it can happen in big and in small ways, but if you add that all up, I really think it has changed my life quite a bit.
Yeah, when we had you here to do the filming, I just remember, how they talk about, it's not what people say to you, it's how they make you feel that you remember. I just remember feeling calm from you.
Yeah.
Wow, I really need to get into this mindfulness stuff. She's so zen. I know it's not every day, but
not every day.
Definitely I took note. I was very impressed. So tell me about these brain states and triggers and that you talk about in the course.
Yeah, so in the course I talk about red, orange, green brain, which is a model that I've used for a long time, and I still love it because it's really simple. Anyone gets it. I'm not sure if my 2.5-year-old gets it, but I think by the time he's 3 or 4, he would get it. So it's easy to use for adults as well as kids. And essentially what it means is that green brain is either low or well-managed stress. And it means you have all your mental resources available. The back of your brain, the center of the brain, but also the front of the brain are all active and working. And on a sort of chemical level, you'll have higher levels of serotonin and oxytocin, which are feel-good and relationship chemicals. And your adrenaline and stress is either low or really well managed. Now, red brain is the other end. That's where stress chemicals are really high. The feel-good and relationship chemicals drop, and that goes hand in hand with our brain activity changing. So our prefrontal cortex, which is where all the parenting stuff like empathy and perspective taking and self-control and big picture thinking and problem solving, that's all in our cortex, goes offline, and we're working mostly from our emotional and our instinctive brain. Which is useful in emergencies, but not in situations where you need to stay calm and react with empathy and healthy boundaries, and all of that becomes really difficult in red brain. And then in orange brain, we've got sort of neutral middle ground. But what's quite typical for orange brain is that we're always one step ahead, or 2 steps or 3 steps ahead of ourselves. So physically, we might be doing something, but mentally, we're already thinking about something else.
Yes, so many.
Yeah. And you can do that forever, right? Because by the time that your body gets to that thing that you were thinking about, your mind just jumps ahead again.
Yeah.
So you can be in a forever state of not being present. Like your body's here, your mind is here, and that can continue on forever. And mindfulness is a strong green brain activator, is bringing that back to the same place. So having your attention where your body is, and not having it jump around.
So good. I feel like breathing techniques are good for this, for a green brain.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Breathing.
Yeah. Because your breathing is always happening in the now. And also when we are in red brain, and even slightly in orange, that this happens too, is our breathing becomes a lot more shallow and faster. We don't do the deep belly breathing. So by consciously doing the deep belly breathing, you're actually bringing your stress levels down through your breath.
Yeah. Kind of centers you, and actually takes your mind off whatever you're thinking of, because you're thinking about your breathing as well.
Yeah.
So we were just talking before we started recording about what are some of the sort of most common areas of parenting that you tend to talk through. And one of them was screen time, the amount of screen time, how to get them off screen time, the dealing with what happens when you get them off screen time. Tell me, what is a mindful approach to managing screens?
Yeah, it's a question that I get asked a lot. And I think that's because a lot of parents are thinking about it and maybe feel like they need some guidance or advice. There's not a black and white rule around it, but I think it's important to realize, especially for younger kids, that screen time, even though it is enjoyable and entertaining and a fun distraction, usually what happens, and this is how it was in my home, and I think a lot of people will relate to that. The mornings tend to be quite stressful because kids don't necessarily like getting ready and organizing themselves and then getting out the door on time. So that tends to be a bit of a stressful time of the day for many parents. Then at school, the teacher gets the best version of your child because they are not tired yet. They've got all their snacks, so they can just, keep themselves fed. There's lots of fun stuff happening. And school is not amazing for every kid, but most kids, that's where they have their best part of the day. And then they come home and there is this stress increase, like the transition stress, but also all the emotions that at school they didn't want to let out. As soon as they see you, it just comes, blah, it all comes out. And you have no idea why they're so grumpy or emotional every day, but they've been just saving that up just for the moment where you show up.
Or you're safe as well. Yeah.
Sorry?
You're their safe place as well.
Yeah. And that is a privilege, but it's also hard work when you've also had a busy day and you're also maybe hungry and tired. And then by the time you come home, often dinner needs to get done. So what a lot of parents, including myself, then would do is go, all right, well, I just can't deal with all this emotional chaos right now. And it doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon. I'll just check on something and I can get the dinner ready. But very often the turning off of the screen is a real trigger for red brain for a lot of kids and even a lot of adults. Like, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't find it very easy to switch off from our own screens. So let alone a tired, hungry, emotional child that has just been saving up that emotion, not intentionally, but that's how it goes, because even though when you turn on the screen, it seems to disappear, you just hit the snooze button on that emotional downloading that they were doing. It hasn't actually been processed. So then adding to that the trigger of turning off the screen usually is a recipe for, quite a bit of stress response. And then when the dinner is getting cold, when the kids are having their meltdowns, that's also not very nice. And maybe this doesn't happen in lots of people's homes, but I know that there's quite a few parents that find that challenging.
Yeah.
And I've really been on a journey around that as well, because I really felt that I needed them to be on a screen so that I could cope with the after school emotion, plus the having to do dinner. It's not easy.
I once got asked if my first child, Ella, if we were part American, because she had a bit of an American accent at the time from all the TV I put her in front of while I got stuff done. So I soon learned, okay, maybe less TV.
Yeah.
American accent was a giveaway.
Yeah, that is so funny. But I think the numbers actually are another thing that really got me thinking about this. Is, as a psychologist, I see quite a few teenagers that are struggling. And one of the things that really shocked me about working with them is that just the amount of time they would spend on a screen. And it really, maybe I was quite naive about that, but it really shocked me. Like, for most of them, it was probably an average of 8 hours over and above the time spent on a screen doing schoolwork. So that is an entire workday of social media, YouTube, music, videos, whatever they do on there. And it really made me feel a little bit hopeless, in the sense of, how do I help these kids if 8 hours every single day they spend on these really quite anxiety-provoking platforms? Like, what is 1 hour a week with me going to do? So it is one of the things that I really often talk about with teenagers. And I mean, just to be honest, like, I have a phone, I have a computer, I am on social media. It's not that I'm against that, but I know it's just really difficult to moderate. And then at some point I did a workshop and I mentioned this as a topic. And the next week when I came back, two parents of young kids came up to me, and I still remember it clear as day. And they said, "We took your advice. We've banned all screens." And I remember thinking,
Cold turkey.
I don't remember giving that advice at all. And they said, "It's been amazing. It took 3 days. And after that, they just accepted it. And we've had so much less stress and arguing and big emotions." And that night I went home and I said to my husband, "We're going to do that." And we did it cold turkey. We went for, I think, about 3 months, no screen time for the kids at all.
Wow.
And
so
it actually was really
phones,
nothing.
ads, nothing.
Zero.
Just books.
Yes.
Games.
Books, games. And it was really interesting because it took them a while, because we used to do screens after school pretty much every day. And not for hours and hours, but still it was a regular thing. So it took them some time, like, "Oh, I'm bored. Why can't we watch anything?" And we explained, we're going to do this fun experiment. And they weren't very keen. But I think it only took a couple of days, and they just settled into this different dynamic of a lot more creativity, a lot more playing together, much better, a lot more just going outside and finding something to do, a lot more reading, a lot more arts. And it's not like we didn't do any of that, but they were just naturally, I think what happened on reflection is that when the screens were such a regular thing, they would not settle into play anything. They would just be waiting for it to come, because it always would. So they would just kind of be hanging around, being bored. And then very often in hindsight, as soon as things got stressful, that is what we would do. We would put on something for them to watch. So they they didn't go into any of that kind of green brain play. They were just in orange brain waiting for the thing to happen.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, sorry, rookie mistake. I don't know how, but my phone messages come up on my computer. I'm like, I don't know how to turn it off. We're just going to hear some dings. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't hear it, so maybe it's not showing up on the record. I don't know.
Okay. Oh well, it's all good. I think back to times when we've said, look, we're going to have a screen-free month with our kids, and there's definitely almost like a withdrawal process, which is a little bit scary to think, really. And I have heard that screens can be quite, as addictive as cocaine, or have the same effect as pleasing effect. And then I do notice that the kids actually do get along better, and it gives them some space to think. It's quite different. Instead of always being entertained, those first few days are actually quite painful for me as a parent, because like, Mum, I'm bored, what can I do? Mum, I'm bored, what can I do? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, just get the screen.
I know.
I'm so busy, can I not think of it? But
because in that way we are addicted to their screen time.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Which is not good. But, if you're going to do it, it's like, well, let's prepare myself and the family for this. Let's go to the library and get some books. Let's, see what activities we could be doing outside, or, make a plan. I know in our school holidays with the kids, we create a bucket list of things we're going to do over the holidays. So, if we make it a month and then reassess, hey, we've achieved the month, because I think I feel like taking them off them for more than a month, they might be like, yeah, no, that's not happening. But once they've seen that it's okay and they're still able to find entertainment and do stuff, then it's not so bad. But and
it's not something that lasted. So I think we 2.5, maybe 3 months, and we gave in when we were renovating our house, and we just caved. But it was still really good, because I think we all learned from that, and them maybe not as consciously as we did, that it was really having an impact on our emotions and on our connection as the family. Because especially when you have young kids and they go to bed at 7, like, you don't really get that much time with them. And if that time is after school meltdown, which they may or may not have every day, but for most kids that is there, they're not at their most pleasant, enjoyable, fun versions of themselves after school. And if then they're behind a screen, and then dinner can also be quite stressful, because now they're dealing with the stress of the screen having to be turned off, and then it's bedtime. And I think looking back, it really got us to be closer. So we're not a screen-free family anymore, but it is also not a daily thing. So it's not something that they expect. So it's more for special occasions. We watch family movies. Sometimes they, when it's a rainy day, they can watch something, but it's not a consistent everyday thing. And I think that's really, really helped. On the other hand, Shirley, who's got, so my colleague who's got quite a bit older kids, she went the exactly other way. So she found that policing the screen time actually really got in the way of the relationship, and really became, she felt more like, with permission, I'm sharing this, like she was constantly policing, and that really got in the way of her connection with her preteens and teens. So she went the other way and said, I'm going to take away all restrictions, and to protect the connection and preserve that relationship, and not have it be such a thing. And I think both approaches are mindful, because it is prioritizing the relationship and the connection.
Yeah. Do you think that comes with age, though? There's a point where you've got to control things, because a young one's self-control isn't quite so awesome as the older ones, but also there's a point where, as you're raising teenagers into adults, it's like, guys, you've got to look after, you control you now. So how's that gonna look?
Yeah, absolutely. I think absolutely things change as our kids get older. And freedom comes with responsibility. So I think, ideally, but they also have to learn how to regulate it. And it's such a rigged game because our screens are intentionally highly addictive. So that's not by chance. So I really feel for parents raising teenagers at this time. I think it's a really tough job because, this is the first generation growing up with that type of media and that amount and that easy access. And that's not something that even a lot of adults can manage really well. So I think it's a challenge, but I think understanding the power of screens and how it influences our brain and having regular conversations about that with your kids, no matter what age they are, and having regular check-ins on, is this supporting our connection in our family or is it taking away from it?
Yeah, it's so good. I have a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old. The 16-year-old's turning 17. But when we allowed them a phone at kind of the age of 13, 14-ish, it came with, okay, we want you to say, how you're going to use it. If you're going to get an Instagram or social media account, what are the risks involved with social media? And we kind of wanted them to look into that themselves and then report it back to us so that they've had that time to process and think about it. And then we've had a discussion around it. And I've talked about friends who have had kids bully their kids on social media and all of that kind of thing. And so we talk about the risks and the disconnect that it can have with the family and the mindless scrolling, which, I'm totally guilty of as well. But it's made them very aware. And after having like a month off of screens, coming back, they were less excited about getting back to it because it was quite, they had just some little epiphanies, and I did too, which were really healthy for us. And in fact, when it comes to exam time, my daughter deletes Instagram, and she's just off social media during exams, so she's not scrolling. That's what we call it now, just scrolling. It's that mindless scrolling, which is so bad. And, I love the fact that we still have a magazine because it's that disconnect from, and just being mindful and being present and having a cuppa and reading your mag. It's just, and it's just such a precious thing. But
it is. It's a very different experience from doing stuff online, and it's not that everything on a screen is bad, but our brain processes it differently, and especially in the evenings because of the melatonin and how it affects that. Reading a magazine is much better for your brain.
I feel screens just overstimulate, and you're not feeling as tired at bedtime as you normally would if you'd had time to just unwind. And hey, thank you so much for your time. We should wrap up now. Our next one we'll talk through more mindfulness techniques and stuff, but this has been really good. I've really loved the screen time chat. We ask everyone that we have on our show one question at the end. So I haven't pre-warned you on this one, so it's off the top of your head. So what is one thing you swore you'd never do as a parent, but totally do now?
Oh gosh, what is one thing? Have my kids sleep in my bed with me.
I love that. That's so yummy. I love my babies in my bed. They're a bit older.
And I have this kind of love not hate, but I love it and I dislike it at the same time. But yeah, I didn't think that I would do that, but my 6-year-old is in bed with me every single night.
Oh, that's so precious. I love that, but and sometimes, you know, as a parent, it's just like survival mode sometimes. Yep, okay, I want sleep. I need sleep. I'm seeing clients tomorrow. Jump on in.
Yeah, I'm not even fighting it. I actually it's just become the new normal that and it is nice as well. Like I actually really enjoy it. I don't enjoy it when one extra person in bed becomes 2 extra people in bed. Like that's where it gets tricky. But yeah, I never expected that I would be so all good with having a child in bed every single night.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the OHbaby podcast. If you've found this episode useful and encouraging, make sure to share it with your village so that more mothers can feel empowered. Head to ohbaby.co.nz for more from us, and don't forget to subscribe. Mama, you got this. Till next time.